No, I'm not a writer.
It is December the 1st, 2016. I'm Dina, your host, the nuclear proctologist.org. And we lose the sound on that again for some reason. That's the way it works, I guess. We bring you these people that have manipulated you, and they're the same lies for 70 years, but the lie gets a little bit more sophisticated, but it's still a lie. It'll always be a lie. And today's story is literally the worst lies imaginable. Is where your academics make salacious claims when it's common knowledge that nobody can get into the reactors that they were in there, and it's common knowledge that they're completely destroyed. Nobody denies that in the real world, but we're left with people who have access to our leaders and influential medias and are able to manipulate them with precision. And hence is the story of today. These stories, let me see if I can fix that while I'm here. These stories are, there we go, kind of worked. There we go, it worked that time. We got audio, whatever that's all about. And my computer crashed just before I went live. 10 minutes, so I had 10 minutes to scramble. Never even got a drink in my tea. And what we're going to play are clips. Set that back up for everybody. Good morning, everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us, everybody, and giving us an opportunity to listen to the fable.
Now, the other variable here in a boiling water reactor is the spent fuel pool. Now, the spent fuel from the reactor is, once it's been exhausted its useful life, it's then removed and put into a swimming pool at the top of the reactor building. In boiling water reactors, that pool sits 5 floors above the ground. And that is, again, a design issue which turned out to have serious implications in Fukushima. Now, the spent fuel requires cooling as well. Even though the fuel has been out of the reactor
I'll give
for
context
some
in a
period
second.
of time, because of what's called decay heat, that fuel will continue to generate heat for a very long period of time, and you need to continue to supply cooling to it.
Okay, let's stop right there. Let's knock it apart right there. Now, this is Dr. Lyman. He's a representative from, let me come back. I'll get it. Almost. Edwin S. Lyman, senior scientist. Whenever you see that, you should be scared. You should be terrified when you see those words. Why is that? We can't even trust a scientist anymore. Now, the fuel pools he's talking about, radiation or 10 sievers, that meant the fuel rods were fractured for sure, and that will kill you in a few minutes. 5 sievers, this freaking computer, just because I restarted it. 5 sievers will kill you. 10 sievers outside, death sentence. Just walking past it from the x-rays and the neutron bursts and gamma shine. Not gamma like from an isotope, but gamma shine. It's like an x-ray. Huge problems. All parts of the fuel rods appeared to melt at all 3 reactors. And radiation streaming to the atmosphere. All of this was available for that man. You're done, that's it. You never pump enough water in. Okay. Now, the buildings that he's talking about is Unit 3. The fuel pools are gone. We'll give you depictions coming up in a second. And so the fuel pool is up high in the building. It's up very high in the building. And we're going to just scroll up on the background. Now, they've been telling you it looks like this, it looks like that. And that the fuel pool, by the way, is up high in the building. Here's another depiction coming up. Sorry, right here. And what this means, before we start playing the clips, is the fuel pool is right there. There's another one over here. They're up high. This is the top of it is 100 feet in the air. He'll talk about that kind of stuff too. Now he's with the Union of Concerned Scientists. I can't bring that up because, okay, well, I got another way of doing it. Just give me 1 second. There it is. Voila. Because I can't bring in the external computer because it hates me. There we go. We need your support. This is what they're saying. Lyman, nuclear energy, human health, nuclear safety post. Edmund Lyman's, let me see. Before joining, Lyman, I call him, was president of Nuclear Control Institute. Really, he was a postdoctorate research associate at Princeton University. So he's not gullible, Edwin. You're not gullible or naive or anything like that. It's not that you don't know what you're saying, right? Is what I'm saying about it. It's not that the Union of Concerned Scientists don't have checks and balances to catch him if he did fall through the crack, which of course he didn't. He's a lobbyist, obviously. But he shows up everywhere. Wall Street, the Chicago Tribunal, Boston Globe, Times, Wall Street, Washington Post, ABC, CBS, C-SPAN, CNN, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, NPR, PBS, and he writes books and authors stuff that is put out on all this media, right? Okay. See, that's why that's important. Now, he's at Congress doing a lecture. And what he's going to tell them, now he's building up about the fuel pools, 52 seconds left. Let's play that.
Or that fuel itself could become endangered. Now, generally, the industry has thought that's a longer-term issue, and you don't have to worry about the spent fuel pool at the beginning of an accident because you'd have a week or a couple of weeks before that fuel would heat up to the point that it would become a problem. But it turns out Fukushima, they didn't actually know what was going on in the spent fuel pools. They didn't have any indicators available to tell them where the water level was, and there were some troubling signs that maybe the spent fuel pools themselves were in trouble.
Now, this is 2015. He's doing this.
And that could have led to a much larger release of radioactivity if the spent fuel pools had been actually had experienced a fire themselves. Now, it turned out that didn't happen, but they didn't know that for weeks after the accident.
So he just said they didn't have a spent fuel fire at Fukushima? Okay. All right. Hang on. They didn't have an issue, then we're left with a couple of really bizarre questions, like why did they build that? And why does the building look like that if they had no fire? And why are these people faking this fuel pool when the building, these are the official pictures, look like that one over there? Then what was this? And what is that? And how did that happen? We should arrest these people for faking it. Or the Union of Concerned Scientists should meet my demands next Wednesday. You had to watch the trailer to get that one. Just hyperbole. Don't lose a kidney over it. So, I'm kind of confused. So that's the reactor, the pulls. You're like, Dina, you're such a conspiracy theorist saying there's any damage to freak, man. Wait. No, but I got shit here. Hang on. I got shit. I can prove it. Look at it. Let me bring me into the picture a bit better. So the fuel pool is right here. There's 1 million pounds, and there's another 1 million pounds here. So there's 56 transport trucks fully loaded in those pools. That are 10 years, 5 reactor cores. But the pools are not here. That yellow cap is in the center. The bottom of it is a big circle, takes up the whole bottom of the building. And then the center goes straight up the center, obviously. The yellow cap behind me is supposed to be right where my head is and back behind me a little bit, but we're in the center of the building, right? So it's totally, completely destroyed. That's Unit 4 behind me. But scarier, that's Unit 3. And then that model behind me with the fuel rods in the red in the depiction is also applicable to this one. But he just said in Congress,
happen, but they didn't know that for weeks after fuel pools had been actually had experienced a fire themselves. Now, it turned out that didn't happen, but they didn't know that for weeks after the accident.
Well, this is 2015. And so does it matter if someone from the Union of Concerned Scientists tells such a blatant lie? Well, let's keep listening.
This is what happens to a spent fuel pool assembly. If you had a fire in a spent fuel pool, the rods themselves will disintegrate, and essentially the spent fuel could lose almost all of its long-lived radioactivity or a particular isotope called cesium-137.
Called cesium-137? The reactors run on uranium-plutonium. An enormous amount of it. The biggest release is uranium-plutonium and then curium. Curium isotopes are just like plutonium. They go right through your lung, sequestering your bones, your teeth. Okay.
So what are the consequences of what happened at Fukushima? Well,
he's showing you destroyed buildings. They're completely destroyed, including Unit 1. Don't show number 2
in
here.
summary, we had 3 reactor cores which melted down, which melted through the reactor vessel, which ended up on the floor of the containment.
Yeah, now, he's notice how slick he says that. But, of course, no one knows for sure that it hasn't gone down into the earth, which, because it can burn and does and did at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, it would have left, Elvis would have left
possibly
the building.
Breaching the containment in certain spots, but that's not even known today. There were 2 spent fuel pools where there were close calls. Turns out the spent fuel pools never actually experienced fires, but again, they didn't know that for several weeks.
So he says it again. So do you think there was a fire there? That's Unit 3. Do you think that experienced, just, I know, Dana, picture doesn't tell us much. Pictures does not evidence, Dana. You haven't got a scientific paper, Dana, to back up the building is destroyed. We're not listening to you, Dana. It's that simple. That's how the academics work. No, Dana hasn't got no papers showing the building is destroyed. He just shows a freaking picture. They show some paint on that. They could probably fire that up tomorrow morning. 6 reactor cores. 1 that was running is gone. This was an event. We had an event. And so you can sleepwalk all you want, but this is the reality that we're faced with.
And it was the confusion of what was going on in the spent fuel pools that led to a distraction from dealing with the reactors themselves.
Distraction. That's some distraction. Just still at it. Like, what a statement. That's like kicked right in your teeth. Okay.
There were massive releases of radiation both into the air and into the water. There
Right, so
are
now-
ongoing environmental hazards at and around the site today.
But not from the fuel pool, from the 5 See, he has to say that, otherwise there's 5 more reactors in each building you got to put in the equation. Chernobyl was 1/3 the size, 30% meltdown, stopped after 10 days. Japan didn't. Well, allegedly stopped after 10 days.
150,000 people were displaced from their homes, and most of whom have not been able to return. And it has damaged the economy of Japan, from agriculture, the fishing industry, to the nuclear industry, because every power reactor
Nuclear is
in
not
Japan,
an industry, buddy.
a country that was heavily dependent on nuclear energy, was shut down and still shut down today.
Damn it. Now, this guy, like, I've analyzed him, and he's writing and stuff like this. He hates himself. He literally friggin' hates his life. He hates everything about himself. He feels like a reject, even though he's extremely popular in, as I showed you earlier. He feels worthless. If you watch those presentations that he do, you can read that right into him. He doesn't believe anything he's saying. He doesn't have any kind of emotion. There's such a lack of an emotion in everything that he says. Just let him finish dinner.
There were massive...
Okay. So now...
So what are the greatest concerns when you have a reactor meltdown? Probably the biggest immediate concern is an isotope called iodine-131, which is produced in copious amounts when a reactor is operating. But as long as the fuel remains intact, it's not an environmental hazard. But
why would he do that when the biggest thing is plutonium and uranium? I'm terrified of plugging in the external computer. Hang on. What number was that? Let's cut that right there for 1 second. 119. Go to 120 after. So, known isotopes, right where I was, right where I was. Look at that kind of stuff. Wait, I'll find the rest of it. Curium isotopes: plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontium, barium, californium. There's so many isotopes, you can barely wrap your minds around it. And all of these, all of them, unequivocally, are worse.
But because iodine sublimates, it's a gas at room temperature, it escapes, and if you have fuel damage,
you got our
it can get into the environment readily. Luckily, it only has an 8-day half-life, meaning it only persists in the environment for...
Uranium lasts for 1 billion, plutonium for 29,000. It's just... There's thousands of isotopes, and he talks about the 8-day one.
Or probably about 3 months. Cesium-137 is another fission product which is of great concern, but it has a 30-year half-life, meaning it persists in the environment for several hundred years.
Now, what cesium really means, I'll finish that one out.
It's not remediated, and that is what contributes to the long-term environmental hazard after radioactive release.
No, and no. We already know americium isotopes, and like we're talking 10 to the power of 4 years. Hang on, let's find that stuff. Think about, this is just curium and the decay chains, and krypton and cesium. Cesium's a tracer, iodine is a tracer. It means everything else, all 9,000 of the isotopes, or 12,000 of the isotopes are now there. Let's keep going.
It's now known that the iodine-131 released from Chernobyl has caused over 6,000 thyroid cancers in children.
Okay, hang on. I forgot about that one. But that's okay. That's all right. 3 million children require treatments. And what they mean by that is permanent treatment. Not to mention, orphanage after orphanages of deformed children there. But 3 million children. Now, thyroid is just a manifestation of the isotopes in your body. Your thyroid also accepts cesium and isotopes of that spectrum. Not just iodine. That's the fable. If you take iodine, potassium pills, it's not going to go in your thyroid. It's going to go everywhere else. But the thyroid is the issue, a big issue, because it's a gland, right? And a gland is not like an organ. And Chernobyl was hell on earth. Chernobyl was 1/3 the size, a 30% meltdown, and it stopped after 10 days. Look at the graveyards from Chernobyl. They used reagents from helicopters to spray it. Here's CNN. Fukushima, only 7% is bad. Why Fukushima is worse than Chernobyl, 72,000 times worse. Over 1 million died in the cancers. Each reactor, this was, hang on, I'm looking for it. Tokyo area soil, Tokyo. Not Fukushima, Tokyo, a couple of 100 kilometers south. Almost 1 million becquerels of just one isotope. If you got one, you got all the others. Let's keep rolling. We're going to run out of time if we don't.
And the cesium-137 in the environment is the reason why there's still an exclusion zone around Chernobyl and now one around Fukushima.
So he married Fukushima and Chernobyl that time. But Chernobyl is nothing, but you'll catch on in a bit. Chernobyl was terrible, like I just showed you, but it's just a paper towel. Japan had 860 excess cancers in 2012.
The worst case didn't come to pass, but no one really knew at that time whether it would or wouldn't.
The worst case scenario, the worst case scenario was the meltdowns, melt-throughs of the reactors, which he just told you earlier was a meltdown, melt-through. But he's talking about the spent fuel pools. He's claiming it's okay, like the picture you see there. Yeah? He's claiming that it's like this down here, not like it is up there. Or it's like that inside of it. He's claiming that the fuel pools are still to your top in the red, right? On your left. Obviously, it's not there.
Ultimately, the iodine cesium releases were much smaller than worst case. In fact, it's still believed that they were smaller than what happened in the Chernobyl accident.
So 10 to 20% of Chernobyl? Really? 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 So what is the Union of Concerned Scientists going to do about this? This is obviously lying. He's obviously manipulating Congress. He obviously manipulated everybody else at CNN and CBS and MSNBC and the Washington Post and the New York Times. Is the Union of Concerned Scientists, the 14,000 academics, going to hold Lyman lies accountable? Or are they there as lobbyists? Or do they exist only as lobbyists? When you say in 2015, and you only talk about iodine and cesium, you're obviously a pathetic person anyway. You can't even tell a proper bullshit story. You got to take this routine. Why tell such a stupid lie? Why tell such a lie that's so easy to prove? At the same time, he's showing you a building that detonated, and then he says 10 to 20% of Chernobyl. Chernobyl didn't look like that we know about. Nothing ever looked like that. This was complete annihilation. He's showing you the picture and lying. That's what Lyman does. But why is he allowed to get away with it? Why didn't his university take his degree?
About about 10 to 20% of the Chernobyl releases to the atmosphere, but that's still plenty bad enough. And one of the
lie doesn't stop here, man.
Environmental consequences of the accident was a very unfortunate confluence.
Was people like you showed up and buried it, and then the environment was able to be destroyed because you showed up and buried it, and the Union of Concerned Scientists, they were too busy walking around with their thumbs in their mouths.
Of events where there was a large...
Now, this is over the top, Lyman. Over the top lie coming up. Oops. I'll get there. Maybe. Okay, right here.
Enough. And one of the major environmental consequences of the accident was a very unfortunate confluence of events where there was a large release of radioactivity from one of the reactors, and they still don't know which one or exactly when it happened. But that occurred when the winds started to blow toward the northwest, and there was also...
So, northwest is away from Tokyo. This is why he's saying this, is that the plume went there. The plume done the whole country, the entire country. Not only that, hang on. You got to think about how bad this really actually was and what he's actually doing. Here's a model of actually the dispersal coming out of Japan. It's coming out of Japan over there. It doesn't stop coming out of Japan in any of the models. Think about the model and what he's saying. It went to this tiny little section. But in reality, the model is only based upon a single reactor. It's not based upon the 5 reactor cores missing from the fuel pools that don't exist, that were full of reactor cores. They're full of reactor cores. Every 2 years tops, new reactor core amount is upstairs. The plume doesn't stop coming out. There's another plume. Behind me is Japan. See the plume coming out. The plume is coming. It just keeps going. Now over there on the other side, that you far left, is coming over. It's going to hit North America. Boom. It's hitting North America, Canada, Alaska. Now it's all of the Pacific. Now it's most of North America and about now. All of Japan, all of China, all of Asia, all of North America, all of most of the Atlantic, all the Pacific, all of North America, just about all the Atlantic, give it a few. Now this is in increments, this is the 27th of March. The accident happened on the 11th. The releases never stopped. This is based upon 40 days, Lyman. So his model saying it only went straight over the deer was a serious fabrication. An unbelievable betrayal to academic science and his families and friends and loved ones and anybody that ever got in his life. See, this model is only based upon a couple of days' releases. It's not based upon the actual inventories.
Fog and other precipitation, and that caused a contaminated plume all the way out 25 or 30 miles away from the site, past the village of Itate. And
so why show Congress their own NOAA map from the NOAA itself? Why do something like that, or show it from France, how the plume, based upon just a couple of isotopes, not based upon the actual inventory, actually works? Why do something like that? Why did Canada show plumes, the same thing covering North America? We got plume after plume models. Like this is Health Canada. Pretty fast for anybody to catch. And they took readings along the coastline on the 18th, 15 minutes. Plume after plume. We know the plume comes in because we got the Austrian models. We got... Let's keep going. Otherwise, we're going to run out of speed.
Now, one of the interesting things is what the threat to Americans actually was. It was we know the U.S. government, about 5 days after the accident, advised Americans in Japan to evacuate.
Because they were looking at this model, but this is why he's saying, he keeps talking about Tokyo and Japan and 50-mile exclusion zone, because he's not going to talk about that officially on the record. Now, if that's a Union Concerned Scientist is going to lie about the inventories to spend fuel pools, lie about the disposition,
evacuate
lie
from
about
within
the
50
isotopes,
miles.
lie about the actual accident itself in every aspect and every facet, minutia of minutia of minutia.
Fukushima.
I don't
Now,
know what to do.
This was an issue both in Japan and the United States. In Japan, at that time, the Japanese authorities were only enforcing a 12-mile evacuation zone. So this made it seem as if the U.S. was somehow disregarding the Japanese own recommendations to the people. But also back home, the U.S. standard for evacuation planning is that we have a 10-mile emergency evacuation zone around a nuclear plant. So the industry here was up in arms about the idea that somehow that might be called into question by this decision. So the Nuclear Regulatory Commission didn't make many friends either in the State Department or the
Yeah, because, so evacuate Tokyo.
The worst case didn't come to pass, but...
Right, so evacuate Tokyo and evacuate North America, evacuate the Pacific Ocean, like the models I'm showing you. And that's to show, basically what you ended up with was that you have to realize by getting rid of all the fuel pools and not even mentioning just eventing produced these models was a betrayal, an unbelievable betrayal. Why show up? Why do that? How many people actually believed him when he was doing it? What, like, a lot of these people know he's lying. Majority of these people know that he's absolutely 100% unbelievable, because this is government's own model. Why didn't he use the model from his own government? Why did he use one of the PR firm's models showing the plume to go into one village? Because he's a lobbyist, and he'll end up killing everything on the planet, him and his cronies. And so we asked that the Union of Concerned Scientists deal with him. Fire him, get rid of him, publicly ostracize him so he doesn't do it anymore. And then, because what are we left with if no one's going to do what they're supposed to do? If no one's going to actually do it? If you're not going to ostracize the ones that are causing the issue, the ones that are destroying any hope, destroying the future, destroying the ability to have a conversation, destroying the integrity of media and academics, then where will we end up? We will end up as nothing better than vicious thugs. We will end up as nothing more than savages. We will end up with no future. We'll end up with no harmony. We'll end up with no hope. We'll end up with no way forward. We'll end up with nothing but chaos, nothing but mistrust, nothing but betrayal, nothing but suspicion, nothing but contempt, nothing but corruptness that disassociates everybody from the task, that leaves you without no one to turn to, no one to give you hope, no one to console you, no one you can turn to. It's not fair. How did we get to this when we're supposed to be living in the Jetson age in harmony, working for a future for not only us, but our 8 million other hosts on the planet? How are we stewards when we can turn our back on what we got done? How can we do that? Why are we not in arms? It's because we put our faith into these institutions like the Union of Concerned Scientists that are not concerned at all. They're concerned with confusing and manipulating and deceiving you. It's heartbreaking. Hugs for everybody.